What's up, guys? It is Coach Kally V, and this is another softball podcast. In today's episode, I have a super special guest in the house. Again, not my house, but in my Zoom. It is Mr. Austin Wasserman. He is the owner, creator of High Level Throwing. And that was so hard for me to say because I want to say high level training, which I'm sure you probably get that a lot, don't you?
We do. Yep. So we just got to correct them a little bit. High level throwing. Totally. Yep.
So why Austin? Why now? Well, for starters, I attended the NFCA convention last year and towards the end of the year, and I'm sitting there in his little caucus is what they call it, like their presentation, it's a German word, and I'm writing stuff down, and all of a sudden you start talking about the posture, the body movement, and I shut my eyes and I'm going, okay, wait a minute. This is literally something that I would be telling my fast pitch pitchers. Okay, wait. What if I'm instructing a kid how to hit? Okay, but wait, he's talking about throwing overhand. Like, you literally had me at that one body posture, just umbrellaed everywhere. That was so amazing.
Well, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, like to me, that's you keeping things super, super simple for everybody to understand.
Yeah, and that's kind of, high level throwing was just started by accident, honestly. I think it was 2008 or 2009, and I started working with athletes and really just getting them to move better. I started up in New Hampshire, so kind of a small space, renting a cage, just working with athletes. And over time, I just started to realize like movement patterns weren't great, whether it's, from a sprint mechanic to like an agility, acceleration, deceleration to a skilled movement like throwing, hitting, and pitching. And, I was working with these athletes and just realizing these movements were not very good. And it kind of organically happened that I started to work with overhand throwing specifically. And it was just seeing what they were doing. And I realized I could not get these athletes strong, get these athletes fast, if I could not kind of take care of a basic element of the game, a basic sequence. So, this started way back 2008, 2009, when I just wanted to be a strength coach. That's kind of where I started. So understanding the body and how things move and, over time evolving and progressing and trying to transfer that to overhand throwing and pitching skill work. It definitely was a challenge, but I think now people are starting to understand how critical like good sequencing and good movement is for the overall skill. Again, whether you're hitting, pitching, or overhand throwing. So it was just this kind of organic movement that happened, and I'm glad it did because now people are starting to care about like their arms and overhand throwing in softball. At least it was, very much baseball heavy, and this is what we do for arm care, and this is our drill progressions. And in softball, there really wasn't much out there in terms of progressing and giving these girls good quality movements based on what their needs might be. So that's kind of how it started and evolved.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, what is your like technical degree? Did you go to college or did you go to tech school? Like what was the blueprint to this?
Yeah. So I went to University of New Orleans actually first. I went there for 2 years. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Like that's what I wanted to do. So I got to compete against LSU and big time schools, and that was really fun. But, I realized I need to get my butt in gear and, start to think about what I wanted to do. And I always had a passion for just athletes and strength training and movement and, just sports in general. So I ended up transferring to University of Connecticut, and I graduated from UConn. I got my degree in kinesiology and exercise physiology, and then I went back to school and got my degree in exercise, or I got my degree in clinical nutrition, got my master's in clinical nutrition. So I had those certifications, those backgrounds, those degrees to really apply what I learned. I worked in New York City also for a couple of years at a physical therapy facility. So I definitely learned a ton there, working with different athletes, different age groups, different injuries. So, I started to build a background from the ground up, and then started to implement what I learned and, from real life experience, and started to, on a small scale of just working with athletes in a single cage, just doing basic like warm-ups and movements, doing all skills, hitting, throwing, pitching. And then again, over time, I just started to find there was more of a need for overhand throwing development, and no one was really talking about it or discussing it. So I just kind of jumped right in.
No, I'm really glad you did, because it's definitely something like when I was growing up, it was just literally, the good old over the chest, behind the head,
Same
like
here.
do the circles. I joke around with my girls and do like, this is what we did in college kind of thing,
Sure.
and it's changed a lot to the aspect of like, I feel like the way you teach it, like there is no concept of throw like a girl in there. Like you're literally taking, whether you're bio boy, bio girl, right? You're taking the throwing mechanics and making it streamlined. Doesn't matter
Correct.
where you come from. Like I love how
Exactly.
you.
It's no, you're 100% right. It's really just based on movement. And
Mhm.
we have, boys that throw harder than girls, and we have girls that throw harder than boys, and it's awesome. And it's just a skill and a sequence that the body is capable of doing, performing. So we, obviously provide the same stuff we do with our baseball athletes, with our softball athletes, but there's also more of a need in specifics in terms of like arm pathway or hip patterning that we have to pay more attention to on the softball side, in that aspect. So you start to see, these things happen and occur, and how to troubleshoot specific weird movements or awkward
Mhm.
movements. And, you start to see these common things more, over and over again. And even based on the age group, you start to see a lot of common themes. But honestly, like how we train, I was taught this arm behind, wrist flicks, L
Yep.
drills as a baseball kid too. And that's what I was taught. So I was going to teach it to all of my athletes, but then realizing like they're not making good plays on the field. They're not transferring what up like this and this to like an on the run
Yeah.
angle throw, like super fast and quick. So it's just a different way of approaching arm care, and it's all based on movement through positions and kind of what these athletes need the most. And if these athletes work really well with their hips and their legs, but their arm is a little off, we're going to kind of troubleshoot that. Or if their arm is phenomenal and they have good load, good release, but their back hip's a little awkward or a little weird, we'll kind of focus more on that. So every athlete's a little different, but you do start to see a lot of common themes. Doesn't matter what the age is.
Yeah. As a pitching coach of over 2.5 decades, there are
Mhm.
common themes like in a 10U bracket, or a 12U bracket. Like, I was mentoring one of the coaches in the coordinated coaching group the other day, and she received a text from a parent who was like, mind you, daughter plays 8U travel ball.
Mhm.
And it was basically, when is my kid going to quit dropping her elbow? And I just told her, I was like, sometimes we as instructors or coaches or mentors in these people's lives, whether they want to admit it or not, we're actually mentoring them. We have to remind parents that what she's doing at 8 is exactly age appropriate.
Mhm.
It doesn't make her any worse than the next 8-year-old. It just means she's developing at her rate, her process.
Totally.
Just remind those parents. So for you, do you find sometimes where, say you're working with a team and maybe it's not you, maybe it's one of your coaches within
Mhm.
your whole organization, but there's like a specific team where there's like, a core group of girls that all have this same little hitch, whatever you want to call it, in their mechanics. When you find that, how do you guys deal with that when it comes to
Mhm.
telling the coach or telling the parents, like, hey, this is kind of where this kid is at right now, but if she keeps doing these processes, these movement patterns, like the switch
Sure.
is going to come on. Like, how do you guys
Yeah.
do?
So we kind of have to break it down, and throwing is a very complex movement. Like it's one of the, you know, fastest movement in all of sports, and we have one of the most unstable joints in the human body. So obviously we have to protect it and talk about things that it's going to, make sense to the parents and
Right.
educate them too while we're trying to train them. So we try and talk about the components and characteristics of athletes. So if we're with a team, or if I'm doing an evaluation on a small group of athletes, we'll kind of go through our components. And this, we have them for, for throwing and for pitching, which it kind of gives instructors just a better idea of where they need to work. Like, where am I going to start with this athlete? So with overhand throwing, we look at like how the arm loads back and how the arm comes through the throwing zone. We can have a whole breakdown on like angles and talk about why this arm pathway is more efficient or what they're doing, kind of wrong in terms of how they load their arm back. So that's like the first thing we look at. We look at how their hips and their torso work together, same in like hitting, same in pitching. We call it like hip trunk relationship, separation, resistance, whatever you want to call it. And then we have like their glove side and then their lead leg. So is their glove side working out, coming back in efficiently? And is their front leg becoming stable and staying stable as the body rotates? So those are like 4 components that we look at. We have video, we show the parents or we show the coaches, like, this athlete is doing really well with these 3 things, but they're lacking stability on their front leg. And once we understand these characteristics, we then get velocity. So we'll just kind of see what their overhand throwing velocity is. Obviously, with the younger kids, we don't really care. It's more just about, is this athlete using their body correctly or sequencing or having intent? So it kind of teaches them that kind of thing as well. So we'll get their velocities and then we'll put them into, kind of a like categories. So maybe we have 10 athletes and 5 of them really struggle with their lead leg when they plant. All of you athletes are going to train these 3 exercises. Maybe we have 3 athletes that don't load their arm back. They just like bring the arm up and push. Okay, you guys are going to do these 3 exercises for the shoulder and the arm. And then, the last 2 athletes, let's say, just don't do anything with their glove side. They like pull their arm back and their glove just like flies out. So
exactly what I call it. It's flying open.
Exactly. Just like kind of rotate this way versus like having good direction. So we might give these athletes like just 2 or 3 different drills to do, and they can do them before practice or at home, or, just something that's more specific to their needs. And then same thing in pitching too. I know pitching is another complex, like ridiculously complex, hard movement. And, we have characteristics for pitchers as well of like, do athletes generate like good direction and momentum towards the catcher? If yes, okay, great. If not, they're going to do something different. Mm-hmm. I think the hardest thing in pitching is athletes can't hold and like conserve that tension or hold that energy upon foot plant. So like all their hips and their torso are kind of all weird and awkward. So it's a really challenging movement. So understanding like when you break down, like, okay, what does their arm circle look like? What does their hips and shoulders look like? And what does their like lead leg and glove side look like? And then you can start to, categorize them and be more specific with training exercises. Of course, get their velocity, see where they're at. We also like to get video, just like a side view, behind view, just so we get the whole complete picture. And we want to keep it simple because we know like we could attack 50 different things, but it's like, what is the biggest, red flag or the biggest thing that's going to maybe cause them injury? So let's work that first, and then go from there. But that's kind of how we break that down.
When you're out watching kids, or just, say you're watching, but your instructor brain is on still.
Sure.
One of my husband's friends always like, when's the last time you just watched a game? And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do.
No. Where's the first place you go, like on the body?
I look at the arm.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that because I look at the feet. As a pitching instructor, I'm a fan of everything starts from the ground up. So I start at the feet. So.
Yep. And I kind of get mixed like feelings, like, oh, I look at the legs and throwing. For me, I want to go what's more visually easy to see. So like an athlete can see this versus this a lot easier. So understanding the arm pathway and then syncing up the lower body, has been really, really efficient, and athletes respond well to that. For pitching too, like you're starting from the pitching rubber, so you have to generate energy and create good shin angle and direction, and then you have to work open or close, however you want to call it, hold that position, maintain it, and then generate and transfer energy efficiently. So super challenging, really difficult. But yeah, I would just say I look at the arm pathway in overhand throwing.
Okay.
Pitching, I would look same thing, like body positioning, see what their like direction, their shin angle is doing, and then seeing if they can actually hold that
Yeah.
pattern,
It's
through stride
funny
release and
because
stride and foot plant.
that shin angle, like shin, not chin. But I go to the
Mhm.
shin, the foot, the knee, and the thigh. And I'll get a lot of girls that, will watch Division I pitchers or just an older 18U pitcher who, rocks back, lifts her toe, and she's literally getting to her toe, but these little girls don't have the body to handle that kind of energy. So they'll lift and then they
Sure,
prematurely open. And so their entire push side, drive side is just kind of open out for free game. And then they end up collapsing in the front part of their pitch. And you see their butt stick out like a stink bug, which
sure.
when you look at a little girl who's throwing overhand, who, basically does the same thing.
Hmm.
It's just to me, like I said, when I closed my eyes listening to you, I was like, everybody has to listen to this because I'm seeing every position.
Yeah,
Like it's
totally.
even baseball pitching. Like
100%. No, it's totally, we have, again, it's totally the same movement, and everyone needs help in some ways, whether it's a refined piece or like an overhaul. Um, but yeah, it's a tough one to, to work and to train. But if you start to understand the smaller concepts, I think that's really important. Like the shin angle is totally huge. And the younger girls are just, they're compensating again for lack of strength or lack of body awareness. I think the best thing that we've done with the young athletes to feel like how the hips stay stacked and the torso stays stacked is just doing like overhead band, like ISO movements.
yeah.
I can send you the link for this one. And then just medicine ball, like squeezes in the lunge position will really help like their hips and their pelvis stay stacked. So those two exercises I can send you over, but they really help athletes understand their hips when they're working off the pitching rubber. So they're not like, butt out and
Right.
super arched through the lower spine and lumbar back, and just they're just like rotating with their upper body and not like staying stacked and like having good sequencing through pitch release.
Yeah.
But I can send you those.
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. Because I always
Mhm.
talk to my girls about, I call it four corners, your shoulders and your hips, how, believe it or not, like once your sequencing gets like spot on, it's going to move as one unit. Like you're going to have
Mhm.
internal rotation and everything's going to move at the same time. Um, I was troubleshooting the other day with one of my online clients, and she was like, Coach, can I just take duct tape and like put it across and then put it across and then work in the mirror to make sure and I was like, 100%. I was like,
Sure.
that's really just I guess the layman's way of doing a skeleton body, like the little
Yeah,
app. I'm like, you're basically
totally.
an app on yourself on the mirror. Do you do a lot of mirror work with your athletes? Because I'm a fan of that too.
So, I mean, we definitely recommend that. We'll
Okay.
just have them set up their video,
I
just
love that.
so they can like scrub through it and they can see. And for us, when we're doing assessments, whether it's a remote athlete or online program, whatever, we need to see it too. So we want to make sure that what they're telling us or what they're feeling is what we're seeing too on the
Mm-hmm.
video. I'm like, okay, cool. Like you're feeling this, we're seeing this. Let's match it up, and let's go from there. But I think video is the best tool. It's just taking slow motion, just slow it down. But yeah, I mean, if you can slow your body down and see your like in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
we recommend that too. Mhm.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, I do have a couple questions because I did drop in my coordinated coaching group that I was going to be talking with you. And um, Coach
Mhm.
Lynch, he is a 10U coach with the Lady Canes out in Virginia.
Mhm.
Um, his daughter is a catcher and she hits left but throws right. And he actually has Crystal Byers. they're
Mhm.
actually working with high level throwing right now, the whole
Oh,
team.
nice.
So he's
Sure.
got Coach Crystal working with them. Um, he calls it the Chuck, and I'm going to say this wrong, Knobloch. Is that syndrome?
Knobloch.
Yeah,
Chuck
there you go. I
Knobloch.
told you I was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Having a
But
tough
he's
time
like,
throwing. Is it to the pitcher or to like a base?
just in general, he wants to know like if you have seen girls that hit left, throw right, if there's like a disconnect with getting their mechanics to cross over.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen that for sure. I've also seen just lefty lefties or righty righties also have
Okay.
problems too, and like, and that's I don't know if there was like a specific play or an error or something that like triggered this
Hmm.
Chuck Knobloch, because the Chuck Knobloch was like he couldn't throw from second base to first base, so there was some potential like YIPS
Okay.
stuff happening. So I don't know if I have some people that he could talk to for sure. But I have seen athletes that are lefty righty have some confusion because of like they never rotate very
Yeah.
well from the right. I've seen it more in like first basemen or like pitchers that are also like position players that just don't rotate from one side, or they don't, like a pitcher who's a lefty hitter and a righty thrower will pitch from the right side, but they don't throw from the right side. So their rotation and sequence might be really weird or awkward.
Hmm.
So we've seen that before, but um, yeah, I'd be curious to know if it's just in general or like in a game to a pitch back to the pitcher or to like a base throwing a runner out. But I have some people that I could connect them with
Okay.
if that's
Yeah.
what it's telling me.
That would be awesome because
Hmm.
she's, I mean, from the video I've seen her, like she's a little athlete. Like she
Sure.
played up. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm like, well, maybe that's it. Maybe just because she's young, maybe there's that mental, you
Could
know.
be too. I'd have to see like full video and get the complete picture, of her. I don't want her to say like, oh,
Mhm.
she's not throwing because of
Yeah.
this, but typically if there's like a mechanic, like if like, oh, this elbow's getting up, or like there's some things we can work on, but I'd be curious to know with that athlete.
Well, when he said that, it brought up, I had a pitcher once who hit left through right. And she also had the, I don't know the medical term, but it's basically where the elbows, it's not
Hmm.
hyper extended, but there, you see it in a lot of long bone people where their joints are just super loose. And it was always really hard to get her to understand internal rotation, like
Hmm.
with the right, throwing right, anything right. But man, she could hit the ball. Like
Great.
on the left side, she could shoot, and she was an itty bitty thing. She knew how to use her hips and she was getting them
Sure.
off the fence.
And
So
it's funny too, like with hitting, like there's two hands on the bat, so like you're a little more connected, and like the barrels kind of work in this specific pattern. And in throwing, like your body can work really well, but your arm and your shoulder blade might not be connected to the rest of your body. So like sequencing, you might be really good, but then you might have no connection with your
yeah,
arm, and have no feel for like letting your body bring the arm forward. So those types of athletes need more like almost like heavy ball plyo
yeah,
throws, or like resist, like have someone hold the hand and like let them do some like rotation movements, so they can feel those body parts working. So
yeah.
it's almost like the arm is like has a
It has
mind
a
of
mind
its
of
own.
its
It's like,
own.
what? It's like pushing forward. How does that even happen? So,
Yeah, they're
you
like,
know,
I reached out to one of my good friends in Albuquerque. Her name's Sandy Munoz. She owns Elite Softball Training there. Um, I'm like, what is happening here? Like, we literally just took 10 steps forward, and I feel like we just took 50 steps back. But
yeah.
it was just like everything with, and she was formerly Hello Elbow. So I don't know if you've done a lot of studies on Hello Elbow to internal rotation to whip and,
Mhm.
looked at that. But she came to me with elbow pain, and I told her I'm internal rotation. And then once she started working with me, elbow pain within 2 weeks went away, no
Mhm.
more. But the biggest thing was once she would get on the posterior aspect of her track, right? She's leading with her elbow. She would
Mhm.
she would get behind. And I was like,
Mhm.
whoa, what is happening right now? So we did a lot of band work. Sandy sent me a nice little video on like
Sure.
literally putting the band in the door, and you're just working basically the back of that track from like 9 o'clock on
Mhm.
for the slot. And it was just tough. Like, and I'm like, this is one of those things. Like I've had to tell one girl in 2.5 decades, like, I don't know if you're going to be a pitcher. And her parents
Yeah.
ended up getting her an MRI, and they actually found that she had like congenital
Hmm.
malformation of her tendons in her shoulders that
Yikes.
was not allowing her to get to a full track. She was out here like this. And I
Sure.
was
She's just
like, yeah, I was like, I
compensating
can't,
for it.
yeah, it's like, I can't see you doing this for a long time because that's not like,
Right.
even if you do have that congenital malformation, it's still going to eat away at your tendons because the way your bones are in
Hmm.
there, your tendons, like something's going to give.
Sure. Man,
And
that's a
once they
tough
got
one.
the MRI, they were like, okay, she became a first
Yeah.
baseman and she was really good at it, but it was just tough. So I'm always like, so I have a medical background. I was an ultrasound tech for 17 years.
Hmm.
And so I love seeing them like towards the like probably last 7 years, that's where
Sure.
muscle skeleton got super on fire and like literally going into the PT with my oldest boy who plays baseball in college. They pull out the ultrasound machine and I'm like looking and they're like, hey, can you turn the gain up? I'm like, sure. And I was like, not
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
my clinic. But
That's funny.
yeah, just seeing like the spaces with the nerves and in the
Sure.
joints and the fluid, like so many things in my mind as a pitching coach happen when I can't get somebody to move properly. And it's like, gets a little
Yeah.
scary because it's
Yeah.
not about my way, right? Like, how do you overcome that? If somebody's like, look, Austin, it's not your way. Like, how do you keep it
Yeah.
simple for that
No,
person?
it's again, I always go back to like the like a needs analysis. Like, what does this person need? What does this athlete need?
Mm,
It's their career. Like, I'm here to help and guide them and give them, my advice and feedback and why like their bodies are moving the way they are and why it needs to move this way in order
mhm,
to, be more efficient with your movement. And again, a lot of athletes try to do too much too fast and try to get really complicated really fast and really early. And, you know, even like, Olympic athletes will still tell you like we just do the basic stuff and we make sure we do it really well and we
yeah,
do it consistently. And when it's time to perform, like we're just, making sure our bodies are ready to go. So, I think obviously the volume of games too can, add on to that as well. And if your body is not moving the right way, you're going to break down somewhere along that 100 game, season that
100%.
you're playing, so, and pitching is a violent move, pitching, throwing and pitching are violent movements. There's body parts moving in all different directions and you have to hit different locations and, your body has to be very, very seamless to do that over and over and over again without breaking down. So from the younger ages, it's just like, let's get their bodies moving right. Let's understand movement. Who cares about velocity or where the pitch goes? Let's just have fun training and let's keep these athletes
Love
in the
that.
game, so that they're not getting burnt out when they're 12 and 13 and like, oh, I hate this game or like I have to have a 100 pitch bullpen and all these things are on these kids. So I think
Mhm.
just letting them have fun, letting them train and enjoy the process. And then when it's time to ramp up, all right, these athletes, you guys earned it. Now you can ramp up. Like, oh, you haven't earned it yet, but now you earned it. Okay, let's ramp up our volume and, maybe go on a different program or a different path. So, there's always that, like, if you want to go from like the ground up, like where they start 7, 8, 9 to where you think like what their trajectory is, like how do you get to middle school? How do you get to high school? How do you get to, the next level or whether it's their path is like rec league, then middle school, and travel and then high school. So I think it's just starting to figure out what your pitchers are and identifying them a little bit so you can have a better approach to training them.
Man, that could literally be one podcast. Everything you just said.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sitting here like, yep, yep, because I've dealt with pitchers who I get them, I call it the latter part, the latter stage, right? If I would have had them in the beginning, we wouldn't be fighting this battle. And,
Exactly.
it's one of those things where I'll do evaluations with them, the same thing as you. I introduce like within 4 sessions, a lot of video work. I
Mm-hmm.
start doing, basically rendering a drill work right away. And it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, if we've been working on this for this long and it's not changing, there's other
Yeah.
things we have to factor out as coaches, right? Are you doing your drill work? Are you
One,
sending me video?
right.
If you're not, well, then you're kind of wasting mom and dad's money.
Sure.
If you are, and then it's still not working, then I feel like that's kind of like that worst case scenario for the kid where like, unfortunately, like your body, you started, I don't want to say wrong because this isn't about wrong or right, black or white in that
Mhm.
aspect, right? But you started in such a, how would I say, green way. And basically, you were getting the ball across the plate, you were throwing strikes, and nobody did anything about it.
Sure.
But now, as a 14, 15-year-old high school travel ball pitcher,
Yeah.
unfortunately, like you can't move like this anymore, or you will end up having arm surgery. You
Hmm.
know, when you said
Yeah.
violent, that made me think of like when baseball players like Tommy Johns or whatever. But like I've heard the baseball stories of where they will pitch and they literally will rip the tendon and they can feel everything
Sure.
happening. And that
Yeah.
always reminds me how violent the movement is.
No, it
So,
totally is. Yeah. Even like just not just on your arm and like your lead leg too, like all that force that you're trying to stop to then put into the ball. So, like you went back to like, are you doing your lessons at home? Like that's number one. Are you training? Are you doing little like
yep.
body weight lunges or little light medicine ball stuff from a young age? Or if you're a little more experienced and advanced, like are you loading your body a little bit more? Because that's just going to give you a better engine,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
move and to throw harder. So, but yeah, I think the training, the movement, are you doing your drill work consistently? Because it's, all those things add up.
100%. Well, that I was waiting for you to answer it, but I'm going to ask it a little bit more specifically because I was like, oh, he's going to answer it. Um, what is a good age to start plyo ball training? Because I know growth plates haven't closed yet. I
Mhm.
don't know if you factor that in, but I think parents sometimes get on social media and they're like, oh, these balls are here. These balls are here. I'm going to put this in
Yeah.
my 7-year-old daughter's training. Like she
Yep.
just started. So, like, talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I have the plyo balls. I actually have them here. So, um, we use the plyo balls basically to pattern these athletes' bodies and sequence better. So
Okay.
velocity is more of like a byproduct
Mm-hmm.
of good sequencing, good movement, and the tools like the weighted balls have been around for so long. It's
Mm-hmm.
just how do you implement them? How do you use them? What is the actual like approach that you're like? We have four different balls: green, pink, blue, and black, and I'll tell you about them in a little bit. But
Okay.
the weighted balls are honestly just used for proprioception, understanding where the joint is in space, understanding where the arm is in space, and over time, tendons, ligaments start to get stronger and you start to utilize your body a lot more efficiently. We're not trying to throw these heavy balls as hard as we can. Like we have a 2 pound ball, we have a 1 pound ball that we use more for like arm care,
Mm-hmm.
like sequencing. Unless we have a bigger athlete that needs a heavier object, they're going to use it, but it's going to be at very low speeds, like against the wall or into a fence or like some wall tap drills just to feel where their arm is. Same with pitching, like how their arm moves through the pitching zone. You get better connected and you get sequenced more efficiently. And then we have like the pink and green, which is this is the same weight as a softball, 7 ounces. And then pink is 9 ounces, which is a little bit heavier. But we throw those at max speeds. So lighter balls, we throw a little bit heavier. The heavy objects we use for more like rotational stuff, arm care, med ball slams. But again, velocity is a byproduct of good movement. If an athlete doesn't have good quality movement, we're not going to start like throwing them max effort, long tossing them, or like doing pull downs, to see how hard they throw. If their patterns are weird, and sometimes these heavy weighted balls can put them in better patterns and sequence them just a little bit more. So just another tool like a medicine ball, like a band, like a flex bar, an aqua bag or aqua tube. Like those are all just training tools and modalities to help get the most out of your athletes. So, I mean, we have athletes as young as 7 years old, just learning how to move. They typically just throw like the normal softball. But if you have kids that are young throwing a football, it's a 1 pound ball and they're throwing a football, like, no one's going to say, oh, it's a weighted ball. You can't throw that, so learning how to or like skipping a rock, like, oh, that's an underload ball. It's 1 ounce. You can't throw that hard as you can. But if you start to like, if you throw tennis balls, weighted balls, baseball, softballs, golf balls, you're starting to train how your body rotates, how to sequence, like where your arm is in space, so you're just kind of feeling out your body and understanding rotation and the overhand throw. So we definitely love plyo balls. We love normal softballs. Like when I started my program, I just did all the drills with a normal softball. But as I researched and as I studied and as I experienced like firsthand with my athletes, a lot of these players needed heavier objects to slow their bodies down and sequence their body more effectively. Like if I gave a girl a softball and told her to throw and she pushes it, if she has a heavier ball, maybe her torso
Mm-hmm.
carries the arm a little bit more. And same thing in pitching. Like you might have a girl like does this kind of weird stuff versus like letting the hips and the torso stay connected more. So yeah, we use these at really low speeds to learn patterns and then start to ramp up and of course transition into normal softball throws or pitches.
I love
Yeah,
that.
it's kind of how we use them. And they've been around for a while. It's just people get freaked out because it's an unstable joint
Mhm.
and a lot of athletes aren't really sure what to do, but these come with programs and we have everything set for athletes and coaches to understand and learn. So, but yeah, they're a great tool for athletes.
I love that because I'm sure you've seen like the heavy hard balls, the pink and the
Mhm,
purple that come in the set.
mhm,
Um, I know whenever I work with those before plyo really came on scene, probably within
mhm.
the last 8 years, um, I always stress to my pitchers like you're never gonna throw from the mound, you know, with a heavy ball. Like everything's
Mhm.
always gonna be in a walk through type momentum movement. Like
Sure.
I need you to feel what's happening to your body. And then when the plyo balls came, like so the first ones I ordered were from Tony Paisley, which I'm sure you
Mhm,
know Paisley's fast pitch.
mhm.
She's got some out there that have the laces, and that's very like the softball community is attracted to that because of the laces. Like pitchers are divas, like we like little things like that. And I Tony actually has stuff that she puts out too, and I like it because for you in the industry, like this is your main thing, you're having another pitching coach out there. Yeah, she's got her own line of Paisley, the crazy Paisleys, but she's literally like echoing what you're saying. And
Mhm.
I think it's huge for you guys at high level throwing. Again, I almost said training, high level throwing to have like other pitching instructors out there echoing what you guys are saying, you
Yeah,
know?
no, it's really cool. We appreciate, the whole purpose of high level throwing and high level pitching was to give coaches and instructors just different drills and movements to blend into their
Yeah.
current, routines and sessions and, work. Like we're not talking about like grips and anything like that. We're talking
No.
about how does the body move the right way so that your pitchers can be more efficient and you can work with them with less stress on like, oh my God, I got to get this kid to move the right way first. But like, let's give them the program. Let's let them do this. Now, like we own these patterns. Now let's focus on like attacking the zone and working pitches and sequencing and different types of pitches that you do offer and you throw. So that's kind of how it all started, and it's still the goal is just to sprinkle in these things, give coaches, instructors different ideas and a different approach to better training their athletes. And I think it starts with like the warm up
Yep.
and then progressing right to a couple little patterning drills and then getting right to drills and bullpens or whatever you have for that day.
Oh, and to
So
me, like I always feel like it's almost like troubleshooting. Like because I'm a fan of slow mo and going screen for screen, because I'm like,
sure.
there's something off and I'm not seeing it with my naked eye. Let's slow it down and then I'll pick it up. Then
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, okay, we've got to slow it down. We need to do band work here. We need to do plyo work here. I always like to talk to my incoming freshmen, like, hey, you're gonna have weights in a matter of months. Like you're gonna start weight training. You need to let your weight training teacher know because unfortunately not a lot of them know this in the high schools. In season, your athletes should not be PRE, bottom line. And
Mhm.
if you need a note from me, I will write it for you. Now, my husband is a strength training and PE health teacher at the high
Mhm.
school. he
Nice.
coaches at. So he's always being that he's a coach, he's locked in. Like he knows when it's
Yeah.
basketball season, all this stuff. But not all the weight training teachers understand that, or they're football
Yeah.
coaches and they just think we're going to get in the weight room and we're just going to go.
Yeah.
So, how could you empower a student athlete to go
Mhm.
into their weight training class and be like, hey, I'm, doing this program with high level throwing,
Mhm.
and this is what I'm not supposed to be doing, and this is what I'm doing. I know you have
Yeah.
this assignment, but like, what do I need to do to get the grade? And can I please continue to work on this stuff? Like, do you ever cross into that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've had to, call or email some strength coaches to be
Okay.
like, hey, back off this athlete's training program, or like, power snatches or hang cleans, are probably not the greatest like power
Ooh.
output approach for, this age, unless,
Oh.
they are playing football, or they have to, like as a college athlete, they have to go into their college strength program and perform these movements, like, which is challenging. But we try to, kind of talk to the athlete, be like, hey, you know, these are the things that you should be doing. These are things you need to stay away from. Please talk to your coach. If you need us to reach out, we will be more than happy to send an email or call them. But there are a lot of coaches that are not providing the right exercises or the right intent, I think, with the exercises, and then like the volume, like the sets and reps.
Mhm.
So I mean, I love strength training. I love lifting all year round. Like if you take 3 months off from your high school season from not training, and you do that for 4 years, like you're going to lose a whole year of training. But you don't have to PR like, 1 RM on all these exercises throughout your season. And we just want to, like, we do basic movements. We do like a push pull upper body, like whether it's like a push up or some like single arm dumbbell like press or a landmine. We'll do like some type of row exercise, whether it's a band or something easy for kids to do without messing their posture up. And then we'll do, a single leg work, whether it's like a lunge, reverse lunge, side lunge, some type of power output, broad jump, skate jump, and then like a sled push or like a sled drag. And that's kind of like how we program: upper body push pull, lower body push pull, some type of like speed or sled, and blend in whatever else you think, core, spine stability, some speed, agility, and then get out of the weight room and you're done. Like it doesn't have to be an hour and a half. It could be 30,
Right.
35 minutes, and then you're quick, you're good, and just do that more consistently, throughout the year versus, oh, I got like a heavy strength day today. I'm not gonna be able to train or play for 4 days because I'm gonna be so sore. But it's like do little things every other day or every couple of days to start small, and those gains will become big gains.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I honestly, our daughter, she's in eighth grade, and
Mhm.
she started, we introduced her to weights probably when she was about 10 or 11, but it was before she actually had the weights. It was, we're going to start with bands, we're going to start with
Mhm.
movement, right? The sandbar, that was always a good start for her, especially
Sure.
just like understanding where the bar is supposed to be if you're doing, an overhead squat.
Yeah.
Um, And then I would say she's been lifting consistently other than Christmas break. We let her have it. But
Nice.
she actually lost weight. She was like, I didn't eat like I normally eat. I didn't live. So I lost weight. I was like,
Well, that's
damn.
a big thing too. Eating and
Yeah.
nutrition
So
that's
it's
huge.
a big thing. But she literally witnessed a season where, everybody was turning 13 and all her friends started getting injured.
Mhm.
And my husband and I have just always said, like, you're going to train because again, proprioception, that's your secret
Sure.
weapon. Like as you're going through growth spurts, you're at an increase for an injury, and that
Hmm.
proprioception is going to train you to combat, rolling your ankle on the base, because let's say you hit the bag correctly, but it was, morning dew was on the bag and your metal cleat slides out. Because you've been training, it
Hmm.
looks like you completely just broke your ankle, but you're up running.
Totally. Like you've done
No.
skate jumps, you've done walking lunges with 30-pound dumbbells in your hand.
Yes.
Like, kids that are untrained, like your sport, like your game is your max effort training session. That's more violent than any strength training session you could possibly do. So we're trying to give these kids the ability to produce force, absorb force, accelerate, decelerate properly so they don't injure their ankle, their knee, and their hip. and their brain is used to doing these patterns and doing these like cut movements and doing these landing movements. Like say you're playing shortstop and you get a line drive and you have to like jump up to catch it and land in like a deep squat. Well, if you don't like deep squat before, you might hurt an ankle or hurt a knee, or just things like that. Trying to translate and make it make sense to athletes.
I
So
love
that's
that.
cool. That's good. I love that she's training. She saw some big differences.
Yeah, she definitely looked around and was like, mom, am I? And I was like, no, you're gonna be fine. So
Good.
one thing I did want to pick your brain about, let's talk about shortstop. You said that and I was like, oh yeah, that was one of my questions I had. Because this always comes up. And I think it actually has almost like a genre of when somebody played baseball, like 30 years ago versus now.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about how fast the game has increased. And we can even do this with softball too. But when you are going to make that play where you have to come in on the ball, are you a fan of continuing to run through, or like you said, get your body posture right so you can make your throw from your feet and go?
Sure. I think it just depends on like the type of hop is provided to you. So like if you're moving in and the ball is working up to you, you might have a chance to just like kind of like shuffle and make it and let it go, versus a ball that might be like closer to the ground, or a ball that might be like kind of like swiveling to the right, like your backhand
Mhm.
would be a good time to like run through either like a two-hand field or a one-hand transfer. So I think just the type of play, the type of ball that you're seeing is going to dictate how you actually move in transition. So I think the ones that are like that are hopping up to you, you can like kind of shuffle, set your feet, get
Yep.
rid of it, versus the ones that like run through and continue. So I think balls that are closer to the ground, a little bit easier to do that.
Yeah.
Balls that are kind of working up, you can kind of like set your feet and get rid of it.
All right. I was just, that came
Yeah.
up in a discussion
Yeah.
the other night with some coaches, and I was like, I'll be sure to put this
Yeah.
one in there because I do think sometimes it does like depend, like sometimes it does depend on
Yeah.
what ball you're receiving. And you have to know, like, this is something huge for if you're a young
You gotta know
coach
your
and you're
runner.
listening to this. Yeah. If you're a young coach and you're listening to this and you're literally getting practice plans from something that was created 20 years ago,
Mhm.
the triangle, like the triangle of how to receive a grounder, that can only happen so long.
Sure.
Like you can only teach a athlete that for so long. At some point, you have to
Hmm.
start teaching them how to receive different grounders. And I feel
Totally.
like some
It's
coaches aren't getting that.
Yeah, it's definitely like from my perspective, it's like what plays happen at shortstop. It's like balls to your left, routine, one hand run through, two hand run through, bare hand run through, backhand in the hole, like backhand jeter throw, backhand run through. So like you start to think about how many plays can happen, and then like second base, what types of plays are they doing? Third base, what types of plays are they doing? And then you can start to train more efficiently. Like in softball back in 2019, I had Devin Bolin. He's at Georgia Tech now. He was at NC State, but he's very good with statistics. And
Mhm.
he broke down post the regional play. I think it was 2019, like 64 teams post regional play for softball. And third basemen were fielding the ball on the run at an angle almost 70% of the time throughout that entire
Wow.
tournament, which is crazy. So like if you're not good at on the run at an angle, third base is probably not for you, or you need to just work better at third base doing those plays. And then I think shortstop was like what was the percentage of shortstops fielding the ball with actually two hands versus one hand and bare hand? And it was like 16% of the ground balls that were fielded from shortstop were fielded with two hands, which is not a lot. So it's like
Yeah.
one hand transfer
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like bare
Quick.
hand quick. So, learn like understanding those statistics. It's like, how do we train our infielders to move faster, to throw from different angles?
Yeah.
Because we have to,
Yeah.
so
But it
no,
starts
totally.
with learning the proper way to move, or else you
Yeah,
can't learn all those other things.
totally.
No, I
Hmm.
love that. That's great. Well, that's all the questions I had. And I
Yeah,
feel like you answered a lot. Like, I'm excited because I'm definitely going to share this with my community here. I'm going to
fantastic.
throw a poll to see if people out here would like to see you out here.
Sure.
Um, I think that would be huge for the community because we play softball all year round here. Like, there are two different little league seasons. There's rec ball, there's travel ball, there's um B tournaments, A tournaments, showcase tournaments, like all the
Sure.
jazz. Like I think it would be really awesome to get you out here
I would
and
love it. Yeah. And I mean, the rec league, like that's where it needs to start, like that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
100%.
12, 13-year-old, obviously you want to work with older kids too and teach them some, more advanced concepts and different stuff. But like if we can't throw, we can't play defense very well, and kids aren't going to like the game. So we want to be able to teach them how to throw properly from a young age, let them get confident, let the instructors feel comfortable
Right.
teaching this, teaching the information, and like it's okay to fail. Like development's going to be very messy. Like it's okay. Balls are going to go all over the place, but as long as we're working towards good body movements over time, these kids are going to get more efficient. Like I had one dad purchased the program when his daughter was 7 years old, which is really cool.
Mhm.
Um, and she came to a clinic like 5 years later. She just turned 13, 6 years later, just turned 13, and she hit 62. And her dad was like, we were doing all the drills when she was 7 years old. And obviously she didn't throw 62, but she was throwing like 40s or 30, whatever it was. And
Mhm.
she got a little stronger, got a little taller, but her sequencing and her patterns stayed the same. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, yeah, we bought the book, back in, 2000, whatever. And we've been doing these drills, and it's really cool to catch at a clinic. And his daughter was one of the best throwers, movers at the session as a 13-year-old. So, and she was like this, like skinny kid, but like she used her body the right way. So it was
Well,
cool to hear that.
and the way I see it, if you're training to move properly at that young age, I feel like as a parent, like it's gonna feed into my kids' hitting ability too. So it's like a
Totally.
twofer. Like it makes total sense. So like, okay, let's learn how to throw because you're learning how to use your hips. It's the same
Yeah.
internal rotation, it's the same posterior posture, the same front side resistance, all the jazz, right? It makes sense. But you did, sorry, I was like, we're gonna close this up. But you sparked a question in my mind because I feel like this
Mhm.
as an instructor. Um, there are growth spurts that happen, right? We have the obvious ones, the ones where we
Mhm.
notice the kids' pants are a little shorter or their clothes are a little tighter. But there's those internal growth spurts or when a girl starts her period.
Mhm.
Do you see changes in them like biomechanically where they're just off? Like, and it's only
Yeah.
for a window, like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, no, I totally. And I think coaches they just need to be aware of that, because like ligaments and tendons are very lax, and like
yes.
range of motion is ridiculous. And it's like their body awareness is just completely off. And like, obviously it's more noticeable when you're with an athlete training them throughout the couple of months, and you're working with them consistently, and you kind of see these things like, okay, just be more aware that like when they go into this pattern, they might like collapse their arm
Ah,
because they can't control it yet, or they're just not stable enough, or just they're just all over the place. This time where their release point, or like how they land with their foot, they might not be as stable on that front leg. So it's just things to be aware of. And I'm
mhm,
sure you see it too with pitching as well, like just
I do.
lots of hyper mobility
Mhm.
happening, and not necessarily like a pattern or a mechanical issue. It's just like their ligaments and are just so loose right now, like it's just like floppy arm, or like their hip is just like turning completely and they can't control it
Mhm.
through that range. So I just would tell instructors, just be aware.
Yeah. I definitely tell my girls that I work with online, like when they're lifting and stuff, that they're
Mhm.
multi-sport athletes. I had a girl who was playing volleyball last year and they would just hit the gym and just like do all these things. And then she would come to me, coach, I only have like
Yeah,
20% today. And I'm like, why? And she's like, we did legs yesterday and the leg routine was so hard. I'm like,
yeah, a lot of jumping too, which is like that's where hips and ACLs and things can kind of slip out,
yes.
if they're not as stable. That's why I think strength and stability is the biggest thing that kids need at that like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Just like isometric like lunge holds, or like squat holds, or just like anything that's going to create stability in their body, a lunge, a side lunge. Otherwise they're not going to control their body, and they're not going to know where their body is in space.
Cool. And it just goes down to like, if we're metaphorically speaking, right? Anytime we're trying to control something, if we can create stability, then we create confidence, and then we create a controlled situation. Like,
Totally.
to me, it just makes sense. You're doing it with the body. So
Totally.
that's
Totally.
awesome. Well, I love this. This has been great. Thank you
I
for being
appreciate it.
on today. Did you have anything
Yeah.
else to add?
I was excited just to be on and answer any questions you had and get, give, the viewers, the community, just an opportunity to hear me talk and talk about high level throwing. And, it started, like I said, started back in 2008. And, it's funny because no one really cared about it till like 2016. Quick story. Coach Murphy
Wait,
at Alabama called me in my
Murph?
office in 2016. I was like, freaking out, like, oh, it's Coach Murphy. So I picked up, and he's like, hey, I've been seeing what you're doing on throwing and I love it. And I've been around for a while. I won a national championship, but I'm always willing to learn. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So he invited me down. He's like, just obviously we can't pay you, but I just want you to be down here and, talk to us about the information because I love it. And I went down there, I talked with coach and from there, it was just, I felt like I had the confidence and was comfortable to talk about what I was passionate about and
Mhm.
kind of take the approach of like, I think we can throw a little bit better and train a little bit better from before. So he kind of, obviously gave me a platform to talk and, super thankful for him. But that was kind of like one of the first, like, whoa, this person is calling me, like me, I like throwing. I like to talk about throwing.
I like to throw.
But so that was really, really cool early on to see and see someone at that caliber still wanting to help his athletes at that level. So
I love that.
it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
But no, anyone can, you can follow me on highlevelthrowing.com. You can check out all of our stuff, information. We have lots of books, free books. I can get your community a code too if you're interested in some of our lightning balls or programs. And again, my goal is to help instructors, build their athletes out the best way they can.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll drop everything in the show notes, and then my KVS community, and then coordinated coaching. I'll be sure to give stuff to them as well.
Cool.
I'm always
Awesome.
like, I know we can't save them all, but isn't saving one of them saving all of them? So
No, I agree. Got to educate, start somewhere, right?
for sure. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, and hopefully we get on soon.
Yes, sir. Let's go.
All right.
Wow, that was such a great episode. You may even find that you go back and you listen to some parts of it again. But before you get off of this particular episode, I want to remind you guys to be sure to check out the show notes. Austin at High Level Throwing is so kind to include links to 3 ebooks, but he also is giving you guys a discount when you use the code KVS11. That's Kally V Softball 11. Just type in KVS11. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. In my mind, I'm thinking there's going to be numbers throwing up. If you're driving and you're listening to this and you can't see me do this, it's actually pretty funny. Either way, just be sure to go to the show notes, check it out, get your discount. Thanks to Austin Wasserman at High Level Throwing for being a guest speaker on the show. And if you guys in Arizona would love to have Austin out here, let me know. Let's get him out here. Let's bring him out. Let's go.